Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this interesting speech, for interesting answers for our questions. And we hope one day to see you here in Perm, in reality, I mean, not in Zoom. Okay, thank you. And now we start our next session, which is devoted to the experience economy. And right now I would like to invite, yes, our next speakers, Barajas and HSE-University, St. Petersburg, Salgado-Barandela and Sanchez-Fernandez. The topic is geographical distribution of economic impact on leakage and leakage of tourism expenditure. Are you here?
Yes.
Yes, please. Guillaume, thank you very much. Yes, and now, please. Yes, what about the distribution of the screen? Do you have rights to show our...
Yeah, it seems yes.
Yeah, that's good. So nice to meet you here in Perm. I mean, just not in real. Yes.
I would have liked to be there. Yeah, but...
Yeah, I understand. But I took part in a MEC the previous year and it was fantastic. Thank you for the wonderful conference, and we are happy that you're joining us today. It's wonderful.
Let me see, because I'm not sure what is the best way for me to share the screen. Probably this way. Okay. Do you see well?
Yes,
it's okay.
we can. Yes, it's good. It's good.
Okay. Should I start? How long?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
It's your time. Please start.
Okay.
Sorry for being late a little bit, but it was a very interesting discussion. Please.
Yeah, for sure. So it was very interesting. Thank you very much. Okay. Well, thank you very much for organizing this very interesting conference. I would have liked to be there. I love to go to Perm. It has been a time for this pandemic situation, but I hope to be there soon again. Today I'm going to present a paper that we have prepared with my colleagues from the University of Vigo, Jessica Salgado and Patricio Sanchez, and then myself. That is about the geographical distribution of economic impact and leakage of tourist expenditure. I would say that this research is consequence of different studies that we have done trying to understand the economic impact of sport events in the area of in Galicia and different towns, and there is a problem that we discovered that usually is not very much taken into account. It related with the limitation of places to stay for the spectators or the participants in sport events. And then there is a phenomenon that is called the leakage, and we wanted to show somehow how important can be this phenomenon. Well, we know that in the organization of medium and small size events, each time they are having more interest for organizers and also in academic fields. So there has been a lot of studies on economic impact of mega events, Olympic Games, World Cup. But each time is more interesting to understand what happened in small size events in small cities. Also, there is a strategy developed by some cities that is to promote tourism through the organization of a portfolio of sport events. It can include also other kind of events that allow the city, for example, to have tourists in low season. So that's very important each time. But also it has been seen that there is more leakage in smaller territories than in big cities or in big areas. Because usually if you have a small town that is organizing an event, is going to have less places where for accommodation for the participants. So I can tell a sample. So then, for example, in the Spanish cycling like tour, in Orense. It was hosting the end of a stage and the beginning of the next one. And then they say, okay, so it's going to be really very impactful. So the city paid a lot of money to bring the competition to the city, but finally there were not enough places in the city for the teams to be hosted, so that they had to go somewhere else. Okay. So there are two current lines of research in this kind of studies. We have some that are related with the study of the spatial effect in economic impact of the events that are hosted in one city, and it has been found that there is an identification that the most populated areas with more development, urban center, is going to be better off than when the host city is a small area. So this is something that has been found. And the other is about the studies of leakage of money to other cities during the celebration of an event. And there are some studies that they have identified that the host region receives between 70 to 80%, while the neighboring regions receive the rest. And this is something that we wanted to test somehow. So the objective of this work is to try to give some hints considering the spatial distribution of the economic impact of sport events, identifying leakages from the expenditure of sport tourists to the cities around the host city. Well, it's not just the sport tourists, but also we include in this category the participants of the event. So, and well, the good thing that we have is that we were able to conduct a couple of surveys regarding two tournaments in Marin. Marin is a small town in Galicia with almost near 25,000 inhabitants. But they have, this town have kind of a strategy to attract a sporting event and encourage the development of tourism in the area. So then they organized in 2018 two events, the Spanish Kickboxing Championship Tatami Sports and the Spanish Basketball Championship for Children's Boys Clubs. So then we have the opportunity to conduct surveys there. So in our paper is a kind of case study because we are just analyzing what has happened with two events in a small town. But what we want is to illustrate somehow the idea that we are presenting in this paper. And on the other hand, so then we have to conduct a survey that is designed to identify which are the expenses that the assistant to these competitions are going to do in Marin, that is the town, and outside Marin. The first thing that we did is to estimate what is the average expenditure per person generated by the spectators. And we have also to identify if they were going to stay in the city or they were going to be in the adjacent areas. Well, with this data, with these expenses, we just multiply by the estimated number of spectators according to the lodging area. And this allows us to obtain the economic repercussion by geographical distribution. That is what we want to remark. In that sense, so that we interviewed 513 people, almost 270 in the kickboxing championship and almost 250 in the basketball championship. And considering what was the total population of the people attending this event, it means that we were working with a margin of error of 5% with a 95% confidence level. And these are the results. So then we have the geographic distribution of spectators and expenditure. So then we have the first part is for the kickboxing championship, and the second part for the basketball championship. We have like 110 spectators that stop over in Marine. And the average expense per person, it was 131, well, almost 32 euros. So it means that the economic repercussion of those that stop over in Marine were 14,500 euros. Well, something similar, you have the figures for basketball championship, and then we have those that don't stop over. So it means that they go to Marine, but they don't overnight there. So then there are less spectators, and obviously the average expense per person obviously is lower. And then we have that almost, well, near to 500 persons, they were attending, but they were not stopping over in Marine. So then most of this, well, these expenses can be considered that they are going to be expended outside the city or the town, and it means that we have a total repercussion of 77,000 more or less. So, well, and something similar with the basketball championship. So it means that if we consider like the total number of participants, these are like not just the previous one were the spectators, these are the participants, and which are the expenditures. So in the case of kickboxing championship, there were 178 participants that stayed in the city with economic repercussion of 20,000. And then in the basketball championship, we asked to the teams, and then we have like information from the teams. There were 6 teams that stayed in Marine, and 25 that were in areas in towns near Marine, so not in Marine. And then so we have all these figures. So which is like the geographic distribution of the economic repercussion in percentage. It means that we have that in the kickboxing championship, considering the spectators, 18.3% of the expenditure were done in Marine. So then around 80% was outside Marine. For the participants were 26.8, so then 73.2 were out of Marine. And in basketball championship, similar figures for the spectators, 18% in Marine, 82% in the rest of the areas, and 14% in Marine and 85% in the rest of the areas. So seeing these results, we can conclude that first, the majority of the sport tourists didn't stop over in Marine. And so this is a clear consequence of the limitation in the cities, well, the towns, hotel capacity. And then we have like a phenomenon that it was called by Daniels like false excursionist. Consequence of this, sorry, I think that I have kind of, yeah, okay. Consequence of this, then we have a leak of the economic impact that exceed more than 300,000 euros. It's not much, but we are talking about a town of 25,000 people living there. So then in that sense, we have to, or it could be interesting for the local public administration that they are going to assume most of the expenses, and probably they are not going to receive like all the economic impact that they were expecting, because they are going to, and the nearby cities are going to be better off because they are going to receive the injection of money for something that they didn't any kind of effort. In that sense, I think that the light of this paper, we can say that it can be an implication, a suggestion that it could be interesting to develop a joint strategy with nearby cities of a similar size. So then better not just to have to do it by marine alone, but doing with the other ones. And it could be interesting to develop a single brand and generate an agenda of sporting events for the area. So in this case, so for example, Marine is very close to Pontevedra, and Pontevedra has kind of similar strategy. It could be better for both Marine and Pontevedra if they try to do it together, like in a single, like they can call like Ria Pontevedra events and distribute the efforts in order to promote the tourism there. I would say also that our findings is that we have said that in previous studies about leakage, they are telling about the 80% will remain in the city. In our case, maybe because the town is very small, we have kind of just the opposite. So like only 20% is going to remain in the city, but 80% is going to be in the nearby areas. So this is all that I wanted to tell you. I hope that I provide a clear idea of what happened. Thank you very much for attention, and I'm ready for any questions that you have.
Yes, thank you very much. We have a question here, please, Anastasia.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a question. You mentioned that mostly the leakage happened because there were not enough places in the hotels, if I understood correctly.
Yeah.
What other reasons were, if you have analyzed that? Maybe the culture, maybe the other facilities in the city were not prepared, and what were those cities where they went? What was the difference between Marine and other cities?
Okay, so then mostly, so then as you can see, there is a big difference between those that stop over, then spend the night overnight in Marine, and those that just go for the event and go back. So it was like 130, yeah, 131 euros, 132, and 50. So, and in the case of the basketball championship, because there are more nights, is 282 and 38. So it's the main part of the expenses per person is related to accommodation. So I can say that the main limitation for Marine is that they don't have enough lodging places, not just hotels, but any other kind of offer, like Airbnb or like other kind of offer. So I think that this is the main point. As I have told you, well, all that area is very touristic. Well, very touristic. Yeah, it's not like Andalusia or the Mediterranean, but it's in the coast, so it's in a very nice area. So there are very small, other small villages around, and also Pontevedra. So Pontevedra is like 20 kilometers from Marine, and they have much more offer. Even you can stay in Vigo and attend the events in Marine is like half an hour by car, and also so Vigo has much more places for accommodation. So I don't think this is a problem of cultural differences. I think it's just a limitation that usually when there are many, most of the studies regarding economic impact of events, they forget about these limitations, and this is one of the things that we wanted to put here, like to show that this is very relevant. I don't know if I have answered your question.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have another question here, please. Stanislav.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a question. One of your suggestions were developing a joint strategy with nearby cities. And from your point of view, what should be included in this type of strategy?
What should be included? I don't know. So then I can tell you then, because we have analyzed a lot of events in Pontevedra. Pontevedra has a very interesting strategy of developing a portfolio of sport events that they are doing all the year. So in this strategy, one of the things that they should do is just to agree, for example, if to share some of the expenses that they have to commit, like the city, or if they have to do some investment or to decide, for example, Pontevedra, they have a very nice swimming pool in which it can be organized like events at any level. So they can be from international events or so, for example, then they can decide which kind of event can be celebrated considering the venues that are in the different areas. So then you will make more profitable the investment in that venues. And also, well, yeah, to coordinate how to, yeah, the possible places for accommodations and this is what I would say. And then the idea, as I have said, is to sell like a common brand. Instead of speaking about Pontevedra or speaking about Marine, they can call about the Ria de Pontevedra. So then that is going to give much more opportunities. I don't know.
Thank you very much.
This is what you wanted.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very interesting presentation, especially from the economical aspect. I mean, we usually speak about some cultural aspects, and this one, sport events and the economical aspect, is particularly curious for us. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions in the chat, Anna? No? No questions in the chat. Thank you very much. And let me introduce you again, because the next speech is also
yeah, but it's going to be Peiruo is the one that is going to present the paper.
Yeah, but I understand that this is your united investigation. Peiruo, the determinants of the demand of tourism in the literature. Are you here? Yes, we can see you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes,
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Will you show us the demonstration?
Sure.
Where are you?
Yeah, I'm sharing it.
Okay.
Can you see
Yes,
it?
we can see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think. Okay, can you see it?
Yes, we can see it perfectly.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'll start.
We can start. Mm-hmm.
So, good afternoon, dear colleagues and listeners. Today, I would like to present a review paper, which I prepared with my scientific advisor. It's the determinants of the demand for tourism in the literature. So generally speaking, the tourism sector has shown sustained growth and emerged as one of the economic engines over the last few decades. A great number of countries receive tourists on a regular basis, and tourism has become a relevant source of income and employment for these countries. The development of tourism industry brings huge benefits, but also result in additional costs to the destination. So therefore, accurate modeling of tourist demand is a critical part of destination development planning. Thus, many practitioners and policymakers are interested in the explanation of tourist demand growth. The increased competitiveness between tourism destinations also forces researchers to explore more about the factors that can contribute to the attractiveness of the destination. So the importance of prediction of tourist flows also explains a large amount of studies in this field being published in the past several decades. The current research that I've done aims to provide a full account of all determinants used in tourist demand modeling and forecasting in literature. And the research question can be stated as following. It is, what is the current state of academic research in the area of tourist demand modeling? And what are the main determinants used in tourist demand modeling? They are reviews and bibliometric analysis conducted in the field, which have contributed to the theoretical development of this theme. However, a comprehensive review on undefined all the determinants affecting tourist demand has not yet been conducted. So previous review have captured the variety of methods and their evolution over time used in the tourist demand forecasting models. And as we can see, the Song Lee review from 2008 is the most cited review paper in the industry. However, it does not tell us about all the determinants that are used, but it is focused solely on the methods that are used in the tourist demand modeling. Also, we have a particular category of reviews that that explains narrow themes like terrorism, political instability, climate-induced change, and these determinants are reviewed separately in these reviews. Also, there are some reviews that are bound to a particular region, which is a recent review by Falk, which reviews only the region of Scandinavia. So this study reviews the articles on tourist demand published between 1984 and 2021. And our review will help to better understand the determinants that can affect the tourist demand. We use to identify the categories and overall trends of the determinants. A systematic review of the Web of Science and Scopus databases has been performed in April 2021. Papers has to be written in English, and we had tourist demand and impact as the keywords for our search. So the keyword search resulted in collecting 1,118 publications from period of 1984 to April 2021. To deal with large body of data in non-cursory way, the identification of manageable pool of the most important studies was undertaken. And the method of selecting studies involved next steps. So firstly, we chose only those publications that were related to tourism. And we had 682 articles found this way. Secondly, after reading all titles, abstracts, and keywords, we were able to eliminate all studies that were not related to our research process. Specifically, the tourist demand should be the subject of the research in these articles. And after context evaluation, only 280 papers were left. Next, the articles were evaluated in terms of their scientific impact among the paper of that period. To avoid biasness of time, the mean values of annual citation for each work were calculated. We selected papers that received more citation than average for all studies published in the same year, in the same period. Papers published in 2021, however, were treated separately because number of citation in them was still very low for obvious reasons. And after exclusion, we found out that 133 articles were relevant to this research. After that, a spreadsheet was prepared with basic data relative to these articles. So the first papers collected in the database regarding our study field of research was published in 1984. However, only in the past 2 decades, the literature on the topic of tourist demand started to rapidly grow. And we can see the distribution of articles from our key study pool shown on this graph. The tourist demand modeling articles were published in 42 different journals, and 28 of them published only 1 article, and only 6 of them published more than 5 articles. This shows that a high number of articles are concentrated in main journals. Top 3 journals have almost half of published articles from our pool. The most relevant journals include Tourism Management, Tourism Economics, Journal of Travel Research, and also Tourism Research and Current Issues in Tourism. About the models used in all these articles, in all these papers, we identified 2 groups of articles depending on the methodological approach they use. It's if they use quantitative method or qualitative method. In our selected pool of studies, only 18 reviewed articles use qualitative analysis. This approach is represented by reviews, case studies, meta-analysis, and other similar methods. Quantitative analysis has a majority of the papers, and quantitative method can be divided into non-causal or time series models and to causal models or econometric models. Econometric models had 82 papers and time series had 33 papers. Time series models use historical pattern to forecast the future of tourist demand. And on contrary to the time series model, the econometric models do not indicate trends based on the historical data, but focus on assessing the impact of the explanatory variable on tourist demand. The most studies use international tourist arrivals to measure the tourist demand. In some cases, the tourist demand is measured in terms of the number of overnight stays in the hotels and apartments. And few other scientific works propose expenditure of tourists and destination as the demand variable. Some of the articles used both dependent variable, different dependent variables. The analysis of the key studies allowed us to categorize the determinants which were used in tourist demand modeling. Probably the most developed theoretical framework for understanding tourist demand stresses the ideas of economic factors, such as people income or tourism cost, affecting destination attractiveness. The availability of data is one of the determining factors of popularity of this kind of proxy. The GDP, exchange rate, consumer price index, income are all very easily accessible and can be easily integrated in any econometric or time series model. So the climate-induced variables possess significant power to affect the tourist demand flow as well, especially at the destination that rely on seasonality. I mean, maybe like skiing places or very hot places where people go to vacations. And the temperature, cloud coverage, and even air quality can be significant push and pull factor affecting the tourist demand. The international tourists are also concerned about the level of political stability, corruption, government effectiveness, regulations, and law. A lot of attention in the field is paid to the man-made crises and natural disasters. And generally, speaking how these events are measured, is a post-event analysis performed using either time series or econometric model, and comparing the predicted tourist demand values with the actual data. And the difference between this data, model data and actual data is regarded as the effect of this event. And this event includes negative effects like natural disasters, disease outbreaks, which is very important right now, economic crises, and also there are some boosting events like sports events, Olympic Games, FIFA World Cup, and etc. The one-time event that have impact on tourist demand are worth investigating because it may help the policymakers and other stakeholders of tourism industry to develop either preventive or improvement measures. Lastly, but not least, there are some determinants that are not commonly used in the field, but they still possess predicting power in models. Some of these determinants have specific features that cannot be applied to any destination, or it can be that the topic is rapidly growing but do not have enough relevant studies to be classified in separate subsection. Like if we talk about infrastructure, the high-speed rail infrastructure appeared in late 2010, and it was a very hot topic for the tourism demand studies, like the availability of high-speed rail infrastructure. Also, the search query data, which has recently emerged as a trending topic in modeling and forecasting of tourist demand. There are also some unique cases, like the impact of TV shows on the tourist arrival into a country. They are very interesting determinants, but they are not widely represented in the scientific literature. The results of this research reveal that there are a huge variety of determinants that can be used to explain the tourist demand. The economic, political, safety, climate, culture, and other factors have all made tourist decision a very complex process for tourists. And considering the importance of accurate tourist demand forecasting, it is crucial to account all the possible factors. And the evidence suggests that effects of determinants may also vary across destination and source market pairs. The main contribution of this study is a creation of extensive list of determinants that are used in tourist demand modeling studies. So by processing this review, it will be possible to determine whether there are any gaps emerging recently in tourist demand modeling. And so the results of this study may be useful for both researchers and practitioners of the tourism industry. One of the flaws or shortcomings of this research, of this review, is maybe the methodology of selecting our pool of key studies. Some studies may be out of our review range. And as the future avenues for our research, I can point some key avenues. Like, firstly, I think it would be very interesting to see the evolution of determinants of tourist demand, how different determinants appeared in the, well, historically in the timeline. Also, I think that research of specific region tourist demand elasticity is also a very hot topic because, as I said, each region in the world may have different elasticity towards different determinants. And in our case, it will be very interesting and important to know which determinants will affect, for instance, Russia. And the last topic is tourist demand and COVID-19 is how tourist demands that were traditional tourist demand determinants are working in the situation of COVID-19. Can they be applied in the future models after the COVID-19? And I think that it is another very big and interesting avenue for the future researchers. Thank you for your attention, and I'm ready for the questions.
Thank you very much. We have one question here, please. Stanislav.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a question about group of determinants, including one-time events. As I remember, it has terrorism, sport events, financial crises, and disease. And I think it's kind of strange to see terrorism and sports events in one group. So does it mean that these types of determinants are the same in the power of impact?
Okay, thank you for your question. Yeah, it's a very good question. No, actually, I did not include it in the presentation, but they are categorized in one category because they are one-time event, not because they are working similarly, and it also applied to anything else. So like GDP, income, exchange rate, they work differently. They, in some countries, they may be not very effective, and in some countries, they are very they have a very high elasticity toward each of the determinants. So if we are talking about negative and positive events, then of course negative events have a far more impact on the tourist decision when they are trying to find the destination. And terrorism is directly affecting the safety of the tourist, and the safety is the most important thing when a tourist consider its trip. Financial crisis may not be so important for some countries because they may not even get involved by that. But terrorism is like absolute thing that will affect the choice of tourists. And terrorism, diseases are all the events that impact on the safety or the health of the tourist. Also, we can say that sports events are more short, give a more short impact for the destination, while terrorist and diseases may last for 2 or 3 years, or maybe terrorist attacks will even lower the attractiveness of the destination for years. So I hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation and for your speech. And now we continue our session, and I'm happy to invite Jermy. I can see you. Can you hear us? Yes, we can see you, and we can hear you. So it's a pleasure for me to announce the General Manager of the Blinking Estate, the National Trust Organization, Jermy. The topic is connection, cores, and conservation. Now, please, it's your turn.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me. Can I just check that you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you quite good. Yes, we also received the link of video, but can you start the demonstration of your presentation? Yeah. Just let's check the rights. Yes, we can see it.
Okay, and hopefully later when I play the video, it will be able to play sound, but we'll see when we get there.
Okay.
So, hello everyone. Yes, I'm Jermy, and I'm the General Manager at Blickling Estate, which is part of the National Trust. So my role at Blickling is to look after everything that forms part of the wider estate. And what I'm going to talk to you about today, a little bit about the National Trust, a little bit about Blickling Estate, part of how we use connection and cause to carry out conservation work, and then a couple of examples where we've used that in different ways. So to begin with, just a little bit about the National Trust for those of you who don't know. We are the biggest conservation charity in Europe when you consider all of our supporters, the land that we look after, and the number of staff and volunteers. That includes over 780 miles of coastline, more than 250,000 hectares of land, over 500 historic houses, castles, parks and gardens, and nearly 1 million works of art. So it's quite a substantial organization. You can see a few examples of the variety of things that we look after, from vast estates to natural landscapes. There's a wind pump, and actually I've included one of our properties that looks a little bit normal and banal, but it's Menlove Avenue, which was the house that John Lennon grew up in, so John Lennon of Beatles fame. And what you can see there top left is the cooker that his Aunt Mimi used to make his favorite meals at, which was egg and chips with a cup of tea. So we have a variety of different kind of places that we look after. I look after the Blickling estate in particular, and this map sort of starts to show the extent of what we have. So down at the kind of right-hand side is Blickling Hall, which is what we consider our core estate, and that includes a historic house, a restaurant, shop, and a formal gardens. And we also have a wider estate with parkland. And here's just a few facts and figures for you. It's over 4,600 acres, and quite a lot of that is tenancy to farmers. There's about 50 staff and 550 volunteers. Quite a lot of listed buildings, which are a designation by government here for the importance level of different buildings, the same as registered parks and gardens. We have quite a few residential tenancies, holiday cottages, which are like hotel accommodation. And if you include through to our main site and our wider parkland, we have 500,000 visitors a year in a normal year. That was in 2019. So as you can see, it's substantial holdings, and whilst we have things like rents, restaurants and shop, it actually takes an awful lot of income to look after a place like this and to do really excellent conservation work. So what we rely on a lot here in the Trust, and particularly at Blickling, is connecting people to our purpose. And our purpose is all about looking after. It's all about making sure that people understand that we do conservation works to preserve these places for the long-term future. And we do that. I've put up this diagram to show how we look at connection, cause, and conservation all being part of that big picture around purpose. So things like connecting people to what we're doing encourages them to help us with fundraising. It encourages them to volunteer with us. It encourages them to have a membership with us. So as a member organization with about 5.5 million members, it's that annual fee that they provide to us that again helps to contribute to that looking after piece. And it also helps that connection to our cause, can even help with us building partnerships with other organizations, and some people leaving legacies, which are larger donations to help with our cause. And part of having that connection to cause is making sure that we put supporters at the heart of everything that we do. And when we say supporters, that means everyone who helps us. That's staff, volunteers, local communities, our visitors and our members. We take the time to always talk about what we're doing. So we're always sharing the good and the challenging. Recently, we've had a national campaign where we show video images of cliff lines falling into the ocean due to climate change. And by sharing some of those difficult things, but then also sharing and celebrating our successes, it helps all of those supporters to understand why they're linking with us, why they're contributing to what we're doing. And that can include everything from engagement activities to simple things like these campaigns and posters, and using them to connect to different kinds of people and the things that they find interesting. So everything from people who want to bake cakes to help us look after our places, to saying everyone needs nature to encourage people to visit our outdoor spaces and help us look after that, And my favorite is the one on the end. Dear future lords and ladies, I leave this place for you. So it's even trying to encourage children to start thinking about the fact that these places are for them and they'll be for them now and well into the future. And there's lots of different ways that we can apply that connection to cause. And I'm going to share with you a couple of examples of that today, of different ways that we might do that. One of them is on a smaller scale, and it's something that we did particularly at Blickling. And it's very much engaging people with things that we're already doing. So when we have a project, when we have work that we need to focus on, when we're doing specific conservation works, it's actually bringing people into that and helping them to share those experiences, but also explaining all the detail around it, what makes it so important and what they might be able to do to help. So this was a project around our library, which you can see a photograph of there. And when we say the library, we mean not just the books that you can see, but also the space that they're housed in. Blickling Library is one of the most significant country house libraries in England and arguably the most important library in the National Trust. There's over 12,500 books and we have some really special ones in there. So we have the first complete Bible to be printed in English, some Jane Austen first editions. We also have the oldest book that's looked after by the National Trust. But as you can imagine, as climate starts to change, as we're seeing higher rainfall, damp ingress into our buildings, spaces like this and the books in them are put at risk. And I've shared a few images here of where we've seen death watch beetle find its way both into our books and into the timbers of the building itself. And you can also see some damp damage in the books. And death watch beetle loves a damp environment, and they basically eat away at the wood until it's dust. So you can see the image there of what was once a very strong, solid piece of oak is actually just riddled with holes and disintegrating. So in order for us to make sure that we were conserving this project, we needed to carry out a £325,000 project to conserve the library and the books. And as you can imagine, that's quite a fundraising task. Of course, we were very lucky to have large funding donations through organizations like Royal Oak, which is our sister group in America. But we also really wanted to use the opportunity to connect with our supporters, not only for them to understand the work, but also to help contribute to that fundraising aim. Over a period of a few years, we did this in a lot of different ways. So here are some of the partnership opportunities that we took. We carried out 2 art installations, and you can see on the bottom left-hand corner was an art exhibition called Word Defiant, where the artists thought about how we get people to recognize books, the spaces that they occupy, and get them to connect to the library itself. And it was mostly a visual art installation. On the right-hand side of the screen, this was an art installation called Edge of Things. And the artist there, Joan and Neville Gaby, working with our librarian, chose a few books of particular interest and built art displays around them. So the image above the artist is, it was a book about nature that they then did sketches from, which were converted into cross stitch that was done by our volunteers and then displayed in the hall. So that whole series of artists connecting to visitors, volunteers taking part, displaying to supporters. And as part of both of those art installations, we carried out a lot of engagement work with children and groups, and we had trained up some of our volunteers to be art ambassadors so that they could really share the message of why the art was important in connection to the book collection. We also worked with a local university, the University of East Anglia, on a project called Unlocking the Archive, where they digitized a number of our very significant books and made them available to people online. So that was part of improving access to people who might not be able to visit us, and for them to be able to see some of those important books without making their way to Blickling. So it's a sort of international scope as well, because anyone in the world could have access to those books. We also did a lot of stuff on site for ourselves and have continued to do so. What you can see here, the gentleman with the magnifying glass, was part of our Buildings, Books and Beatles tours. So these, we invited visitors who made a donation to go on the tour that went straight to the library project, to go up in the attic spaces, see the deteriorating building fabric, look at some of the books and the impact that's been had on it, and to understand the whole process of conservation. We've also grown and developed a large secondhand bookshop. And whilst that hasn't contributed solely to the library, that link to our library and book collection has made the bookshop more interesting to a lot of our visitors. That's also why we've started a partnership with a group called the Gerald Print Museum, who their historic print machines now occupy some of our spaces. So it's using all of these different ways to connect to people to then tell the story of that conservation project, whether it's through come and visit part of the print museum, buy a book from our secondhand bookshop, come on one of our tours, visit at our installation, or go online and see one of our books digitized. It's finding as many different ways as possible to reach the widest audience possible so that they can connect with that thing that we're trying to do to look after. Another way for us to connect to people, this is the second example, is through asking them what they think about our places. So instead of saying, here's all the stuff that we're doing and why it's important, it's saying to them, what's important to you? And starting to make decisions around what comes next for us based on people's input. And this is all linked to what we call our 125 treasures. And this is a wider National Trust piece. So last year marked our 125th anniversary. We were founded in 1895 by a group of people who wanted to give back to those who didn't have access to nature and to historic places. It was founded on the principle, and this quote is by Octavia Hill, one of the people who started the trust: we all want quiet, we all want beauty, we all need space. Unless we have it, we cannot reach that sense of quiet in which whispers of better things come to us gently. And this is something that we as an organization have really held on to over the past 125 years. And in celebrating that 125 years, thinking about the vision of Octavia and her partners, it really made us think about what is important to us might be a little bit different to what's important to our supporters, and how do we get them to connect not only with what we have, but also to share with us what's important to them. And 125 treasures was the first part of that, for us to say, these are some of the really interesting and unique things that we have that we think are really significant. Some of the highlights of this, it's 125 objects across all of our trust properties. And if I just go back, we ended up publishing this book off the back of it so that people could read about and see these different treasures. But yeah, a couple of the highlights. Here at Blickling, we have the Eliot Bible, top right, which is one of the only remaining examples of what is now considered a nearly dead language, and that's the Wampanoag Indian language in America. The automaton elephant from Waddesdon, bottom right, which is absolutely incredible. And if anyone wants to go and look at a video on our website, you can see it's a Victorian piece of machinery that moves and makes music through clockwork. There's the Doll's House at Nostell, Samurai Armour at Snows Manor, and the Molyneux Globe, which is the first published globe in England, which is held at Petworth House. But this was our view. This was our view as the National Trust of what we thought was significant in our collections. But those of us who have a treasure that we were displaying and interpreting decided to use this as an opportunity to ask our visitors, to ask our supporters what they find important. And we kept hold of that word treasure. And in some places, so the chalkboard that you see, it was a really open message. It was, what do you treasure most in the world? And it opened up for people to just say the things that mean a lot to them generally. And that was a way for them to connect that word treasure, to think about, these are the things important in my life. What might be important in the trust? The cards that you see here was another property was actually asking, what did you think about the treasures you saw at Petworth? So it's another layer of that in terms of what did you like about what you saw? And on the flip side of that card was the question, what do you treasure about Petworth otherwise? For us at Blickling, we asked the question, what is your treasure at Blickling across the estate? We've held workshops with our staff and volunteers with different groups who use the estate. So we have a dog walking group and a running group. We've gone out to our local community and we've given them a variety of ways to share that information with us. So one of them was just writing chalkboards. Others, we handed out these treasures forms, which was an empty picture frame and people could draw what was important to them. My favorite was we had a group of children and the girl filled out, I heart Blickling with a rainbow. And then her chalkboard was much more about her and it said, I am Georgia and I am amazing. So she took the opportunity to make herself up in this as well. But I think what's brilliant about this is we're giving that opportunity to people to say what is important to you and to actually start wrapping that into our conservation work and what we're doing. There's so much for us to do that we need to think about different ways to prioritize. And actually, if there are some elements of the estate that are really important to some of those supporters that aren't on that priority list, it gives us an opportunity to say that maybe they should be. And to ask those supporters, how are you going to help us fundraise to make these things happen? So it's going back to that virtuous circle around if we connect people to our cause, they then contribute their time or fundraising, their energy, their partnership to then make that conservation work happen. And I'll just end with a quote that I thought was really great. I had an email in my inbox the other day from a visitor who wrote to me and said, I came to Blickling and I had the most amazing time. And it was one of your volunteers who said this to me. This place was gifted to the National Trust, to you, it's your support that keeps these wonderful places going. And she said, I sometimes forget that what I do, what I give in my membership, when I visit, when I buy a cup of coffee, isn't just for me, it's for that bigger picture. And that's really important for us to be able to share that message with all of our supporters. So that's the piece I was going to share with you today. And I also have a video that hopefully we'll be able to show, which tells you about our Russian connection, actually. So part of the reason that I wanted to speak to you today is that we do have a really strong Russian connection, and our property curator and one of our welcome team who wanted to use her skills in speaking a bit of Russian have put together something to share with you today. So I don't know if we can do that from there or if I should attempt to do it from my computer.
We actually downloaded this video. We can try.
I think that might be safer because I'm not sure that the sound would come through on mine.
Yeah, let's try. We will try to start it. If there are some problems, then we will tell you. 1 second, please. Okay, let's try.
Hello and welcome to the National Trust's fabulous Blickling estate, set here in the heart of Norfolk. The estate is 4,600 acres of beauty. We have lakes, veteran trees, woods and plenty of space for quiet, peace and reflection. There are formal gardens grown and developed over the years. Now they're evolving sustainably in reaction to climate change. The hall itself is at the heart of the estate. Built in 1616 and completed in 1620, it was on the site of an earlier medieval moated manor. The house is full of treasures, not only the collections that we care for, but the stories that they tell us. Some of those stories are surprising.
Здесь, на самом сердце Псковского Норфолка, у нас есть спрятана уникальная история из России. В 1762 году второй граф Бакингемшира Джон Ховард стал послом Великобритании в России. Он покинул свой уютный дом в Бликлинге и отправился в путешествие к императорскому двору Екатерины Великой. Он провел в России 3 года в качестве представителя короля Георгия III. Нам известно, что граф пережил культурный шок, и ему пришлось приспособиться к новому образу жизни.
The Earl's visit to Russia made a strong impression on him. On his return to Blickling, he created this marvellous state bedroom. The beautiful bed was constructed from his canopy of state, the richly embroidered and decorated silk covering which hung above a portrait of the king at Catherine's court in St. Petersburg. The Earl was also given sumptuous gifts by Catherine. He brought them back here to Blickling, and they include this beautiful tapestry of Peter the Great, which is housed here in this reception room. The tapestry was so large that the room had to be increased in size to house it. Conserving these beautiful Russian objects is not easy. 250 years of open display in a historic house presents challenges: damaging light, fluctuating relative humidity, pests, and even mould. Moths are a particular worry for woolen tapestries like this. As a conservation charity, part of the National Trust's role is to find new strategies and solutions to conservation problems. We need to protect the objects and the stories they hold for future generations. At Blickling, we're struggling to control the moth population. We're trialling a new approach using micro-wasps. These tiny parasites lay their own eggs within the moth eggs to stop them reproducing. The state bed, a symbol of the Russian court, however, is in crisis. 250 years of light damage have caused it to fade and the silk to become shattered and split. Physical damage caused by hanging these heavy textiles without effective support has meant that we have had to remove elements from the bed for their own protection. These conservation issues give us a unique opportunity to investigate and preserve these objects and the important Russian stories they tell for a further 50 years. We want to research, protect, conserve and share these global histories.
Мы исследуем времена второго графа в России. Мы изучаем письма графа для того, чтобы понять, какими были его отношения с российским двором и со самой Екатериной. Мы хотим идентифицировать посольские дары русского происхождения и доказать, что этот период в его жизни сохранял значимость и после его возвращения в Blickling.
We're building our knowledge of the objects and histories that represent this enduring relationship. We're creating mutually beneficial partnerships with archivists, textile conservators, academics, to really sustain and explore this wonderful relationship between Blickling and Russia. This is a story that requires celebration.
We're working on an international exhibition exploring this chapter of the Second Earl's life, bringing together Russian objects once displayed here at Blickling and acclaiming the global links of this beautiful rural home.
We're excited to take this next step, exploring, conserving and celebrating the Russian histories of Blickling.
И мы очень рады поделиться возможностью и праздником с новыми международными партнерами. Спасибо.
Thank you very much. And we particularly thank you for the opportunity to listen to some Russian words and phrases. It was very unusual and even unexpected in our meeting. Thank you very much. So curious, and particularly the phrase that he was in great shock when he visited Russia. So I hope one day you will tell us details, because it's so amazing. And I mean, it's so interesting and curious why he was in such a great shock and so on. Okay, thank you very much. Now, can we ask you some questions, if you don't mind?
Yes, of course.
We have one question here. Anastasia?
Yes, thank you. I have a question about our recent negative events in the world. Are there any online projects that you have launched in the pandemic times to maybe maintain the presence in the public and maybe save the fundraising?
Yes, so we've done a lot of just building on our existing website and the work that we've done there, and using our existing social media platforms as the trust. So a lot more video content on things like Facebook, a lot more virtual tours of our buildings available from the website. And actually the project that I mentioned specifically for Blickling around unlocking the archive, certainly we put a little bit more energy into that than I think we normally would have, because that allowed that access to the library that we couldn't have while we were closed. So I think it was much more for us, because we had a lot of resourcing issues as an organization anyway. It was using those existing models that we had and just layering on top of them rather than starting big new ventures.
Thank you.
I also have one question about that period of time, pandemic period of time. So have you tried before and after lockdown some experiments, theatrical experiments, because there are some episodes on the history of that estate that really inspires many people. So have you tried to perform some theatrical interesting moments, maybe outside the house or inside? It's very curious for us. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we used to actually do performances in the house, but a lot of the rules here in the UK have stopped us from having groups of people together inside. And so we moved those outside, actually. We have a group of people we call the diggers, and they call themselves that because they dig through history to find stories. And they are costumed interpreters. So instead of giving small snippets, small little bits of acting in the house, they were actually out on the garden with the hall as a background, telling some of the stories of the history of Blickling. And we're also now, because even with the pandemic easing, we've seen a lot of our visitors still feel very nervous about being inside. So we are talking to some local theatre groups about whether or not they might want to do some performances in the grounds moving forward. So those people who are nervous about indoors can still have that experience outdoors.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Any other questions? No, not yet in the chat. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for this very interesting presentation, particularly for the part that was pronounced in Russian so unexpectedly, and we understand maybe this was especially for us. This is, yes, this is a kind of gift from you. I hope that maybe one day we will come to you to see it by our own eyes, because it's really curious and unusual. And partly it is united with Russia. Thank you very much for being with us here today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Okay, so, and now we have another speech. Antonia, Jose, are you here? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can see you.
Yeah, great.
How are you?
Yeah, we are fine. We are so happy to see you again, because you visited our university not long time ago and your lecture was splendid. Thank you very much. Yes, and from what country you're joining us today? I mean, just right now. From what country?
Well, yes, I'm coming back to Madrid from Rome directly. For that reason, I'm in late 7 minutes. Sorry very much for that.
Okay, now let's start. Let me introduce you, Antonia Hosse Vidal, the president of Global Wine Tourism Organization. And the topic of your speech today is the future of wine tourism. Please, let's start. Can you demonstrate the screen? Do you have the rights?
Okay.
Or there will be, yeah, okay, let's start.
It's only talking about it. Okay?
Yeah, we can start.
So really, I came back from Rome to present GWTO to the academic institutions from Italy and to the public entities as well in Italy, central government and regional and local governments. So I think it's very appropriate to be with you today, right now, to talk about what is GWTO and why its existence. So at this particularly difficult stage, as we deal with the current health, economic, and climate change crisis, what will make a business sector like ours strong will be the ability of its entrepreneurs to adapt to new scenarios. This means that we are facing a particularly volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous scenario, an environment of transformative crisis, of fragmented globality that we must know how to turn into an opportunity for change towards a governance that takes into account inclusivity, accessibility, and sustainability as its three main axes in a transversal way. Few businesses, activities have the growth prospect that this sector has. This new era for wine tourism, agritourism, will focus on adapting to a changing demand, considering market characteristics, size, and segments, and the role to be played within the context of tourism development and networks. There is a need and an opportunity to redefine a new wine tourism paradigm. Businesses have to redefine strategic plans, focusing upon inclusive and sustainable approaches for the citizens, while governments are cooperating more than ever with public-private initiatives, taking into consideration the value of wine tourism role within the broader context of tourism development. The key and basis to success will be in knowledge management and lies in the figure of the enotourist guide as the visible head of the good work of the entire organization. The guide will effectively communicate details and emotions. Not only is the business brand image damaged, but also that of the whole sector, with repercussions on the country's brand image. But what is the Global Wine Tourism Organization? It's the Global Wine Tourism Business and Knowledge Network, comprising the whole value chain of the agritourism sector located in wine destinations, understanding wine in its broadest sense, public administration, central, regional, and local governments, private companies, and educational institutions. The mission is to develop an inclusive and sustainable governance model with those residing within tourism destinations as primary ambassadors to be aligned with the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals framework, with the objective to enhance the socioeconomic development of wine tourism destinations, providing value propositions in academic, business, and public sector levels. But why join GWTO? Because it's a global wine tourism business and knowledge network comprising the whole value chains to enhance the socioeconomic development of wine agritourism destinations with wine culture in its broader sense, providing value propositions in academic, business, and public sector levels, academic research and education through the GWTO Academy, Quality Seal, Economic Monitor, Marketplace, and co-creation of specialized training programs in collaboration with the most prestigious academic entities. Promotion through our area GWTO MICE, strengthen the marketing of their products and services to succeed both at international and local levels, and the branding of the regions in their country brands by organizing events. Communication through the communication planning, social networks and media, and commercialization through the GWTO marketplace. To GWTO, the way to provide the sector with an informed structure lies in its comprehensive professionalization through wine tourism knowledge management. For that, the GWTO Academy, with its own structure and management, is the Center of Wine Tourism Knowledge and Management, organized under a board of international academic authorities, fellows, rectors, deans, professors, and master coordinators, specialists in research and education of wine, agri, and gastrotourism fields. The vision of the GWTO Academy is a comprehensive sociocultural commitment to the sector's development, establishing fruitful leadership by a collective academic voice in research for the co-creation of a governance model into the United Nations Agenda 2030 framework of universal respect, sustainability, the revising of socioeconomic inequities, health, and education. Inspiring, sharing, and dissemination of know-how and expertise on enoturism management is the mission as part of a new global wine tourism approach set for the Declaration on the Future of Wine Tourism on January 2018 on the occasion of the International Conference on the Future of Wine Tourism as a draft roadmap based on sustainable and inclusive growth. The objective of GWTO Academy is an operational unit within the GWTO structure whose goal is to provide GWTO's operational areas and to the wine tourism sector the necessary and comprehensive strategic tools and professionalization through research and training programs on wine tourism knowledge management. Which are the field of action? At institutional development, promote collaboration between government administrations, institutions, universities, and private stakeholders, transferring technical knowledge and developing a business network through the GWTO Academy. Enhance collaboration among public bodies, academic institutions, and private companies through knowledge sharing and best practices. Highlight the educational system, projects, and curricula of member countries. Study, promote, develop, and assist in establishing models of best practices and inclusive governance and business initiative for tourism destination. In the field of research, preparation of academic reports on comparative wine tourism in collaboration with prestigious universities. Leadership in corporate research projects, product and service development, innovation, and strategies. Study and validate international experience in wine tourism, including data analytics and the publication of case studies, books, and other scientific material. Create the GWTO's quality seal, a certificate of excellence that guarantees the highest quality standards and customers' satisfaction, distinguishing wine destinations, private companies, and academic institutions. Research market intelligence through the GWTO Economic Monitor, focusing on the evolution of international markets, including trends, forecasting, and economic impact. In the field of education, co-creating and development of a comprehensive wine tourism training program through international alliance with academic members of GWTO. All GWTO Academy's training programs will consider sustainability throughout its courses in a transversal way, focusing on good practices, successful cases, and the exchange of experiences in sustainable tourism that may be useful for participants to adapt in their companies or destinations. Promote the understanding of the wine tourism concept and establish criteria for correct meaning of the terminology specific to the sector. And for academic businesses, national and international collaboration in the design and development of proposals to promote the academic institutions' members. Presence at leading events, fairs, and national and international forums in tourism, wine, and gastronomy. Promote networking through the organization and participation in global, national, and local events such as conferences, congresses, seminars, symposiums, and forums. Source of knowledge of the GWTO Annual Awards Gala. Address issues and provide solutions through theoretical and applied research, market intelligence, education, training, information, and innovation, and organize fun trips among destination members. The GWTO Academy commitments goes through understand that tourism, that wine tourism is tourism, first of all, field of sustainability, competitiveness, and innovation. Wine tourism should be viewed as a separate business from that of the wine production sector, possessing autonomy in its design and development and able to substantiate its own profit. Wine tourism is a tourism activity with the particularity of being based on the motivation to embrace wine destinations, committed in cultural tourism. In GWTO, believe it is now time to work on broadening the horizons of responsible and supportive wine tourism. As proponents of cultural and gastronomic tourism, we can contribute to universal respect and the revision of socioeconomic inequities according to the United Nations Agenda 2030 framework, mainly in health and well-being, quality education, gender and social equality, climate, ecosystems, and partnerships. Knowledge management has once again become the focus in many sectors, and in this case, in education and training for sustainability through GWTO Academy. Faced with a complex situation such as the current one, if the objective is to position wine tourism in both national and international markets in this new era, we will need to work together. We should not see ourselves as competitors, but as co-competitors by competing through cooperation, bringing together the means that allow us to prepare for a new wine tourism on a global scale. Innovation is a key element for the future of tourism and for wine tourism in both its technological aspect and the scientific principle of technology. The concept of innovation is much wider than the technological or even scientific advanced concept. It is not enough to achieve innovation in the science and technology fields. Innovation is the end result of complex processes of knowledge management. It starts by generating knowledge, pure and applied research, then its dissemination through training and information, and finally, it results in the evolution of our tourism and wine tourism activities as we apply that know-how to products and services in the social, cultural, economic, and governance areas. Focus, it's very important, on a satisfactory customer experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your interesting speech. So do you have any questions, please? Well, there was one question that we would like to learn more. So your organization is really interesting, this Global Wine Tourism Organization. And I wonder, are there any interesting investigations dedicated to the transformation of wine tourism in the period of pandemic? I mean, just are you trying to investigate or to do some interesting moments connected with it? I mean, just it's an unusual situation. Never before we were in such a complete lockdown as now nowadays.
Yeah, Katerina. Well, as I said, the work in GW2 Academy in this sense is co-create programs in every field, research and education, mainly with
I mean, about cooperation, of course, about cooperation. I mean, because you're somehow the supervisor of many interesting tendencies, and I know that you cooperate with different universities and business structures and so on, but maybe you coordinate one of such investigations, because it is a very interesting topic. I mean, the transformation of tourist spheres, particularly wine tourism. I remember on your lecture, you told us that there was a very interesting transformation of some of the wineries because they try to actively to promote themselves by websites, by some interesting moments, and some of them receive some brilliant results.
Yes, it is, like you say, Katerina, but we need to know not only a few cases of transformation in any way, mainly in digital transformation, of course. And for that type of statistic of results, we are working we have sent the initiative to some universities to cooperate with them in this kind of research, obviously. But with no result yet, obviously.
Yeah, we understand, but it's interesting even to look at some not completed investigations, but in some results in the middle, for example. Well, anyway, if you have some results about this tendency, we would like to learn more about it, because it's really a unique situation, absolutely unique for us. Yeah, absolutely. I just was impressed when you made lecture in Perm. I was impressed that some of the companies managed to increase the amount of wine that they managed to sell in 2020 and 2021, and it was amazing. I mean, just there is a serious economic crisis in many spheres, but at the same time, there are some companies who managed to increase their income.
Yes, it is really, but not in a coordinate way with the stakeholders of the sector, but in an individual way, you know. But in all cases of this successful result, it's related, it's focused to digital transformation, because at the end of the day, if you have the border closed and with no tourism, there's no way to communicate and to promotion by the digital resources and so on. So many of the wineries in this case have updated or created its own platform to commercialize the bottle of wines, and of course to create this aspirational feeling to connect and to visit the destinations when we can.
Thank you very much for your answers, for a wonderful speech. We hope to see you one day in Perm again, as not long time before.
I hope so.
Yes, and we would like, of course, to learn more about different events that the organization organizes. I know that there are some fantastic, interesting meetings between the ministries of tourism of different countries, and of course, on that meetings, the problems of wine tourism are very actively discussed. So if you have some meetings, I remember that in November you will have another one. We will gladly join it. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much to you, Katerina.
Thank you. So, dear guests, this is the end of our session for today, but I'm speaking about English session. Now we will have a break, and in local time at 4:15 p.m. It's local Permian time, and it will be 2:15 by the Moscow time. We will have a very interesting conversation about the education in tourism and in experience economy. So till next meeting, till next session. Thank you very much. Thank you all of you for joining us and for being till the end of our session. Thank you.